In the last video, we covered automation triggers, the when side of an automation. Today, we're going to cover actions, the what side. These are the tasks layer executes the moment a trigger fires, creating an element, sending an email, sending a notification, updating an element, updating a Revit parameter. Before we get into them, an automation needs at least one action, but you can add as many as you want using the Add Another Action button at the bottom of an automation setup, right here. Each action runs independently, so there's no guaranteed order of execution, which is important to know. So don't design two automations where one depends on the other finishing first. If you need that kind of sequencing, combine the logic into a single automation action stack when possible. So the first action in our options is create an element. So when the trigger that you've chosen fires, layer creates a new element in the category that you specify. In this case, when a manual trigger happens within room data sheets, we'll create an element and we will create a punch list item. So in my project, I have a room data sheets category and a punch list issues category. I can set up an automation, which is what we're doing now, so that whenever a new room is created, layer automatically creates a corresponding element in a punch list, no manual entry required. In this case, we're going to use a manual trigger just to show this creating an element action. When you configure this action, choose the target category and set the element name either to auto-generated or setting a custom element name. The second action we are going to look at is updating an element. This is honestly probably the one that you'll use most. First, you choose which element to update, either the element that triggered the automation or a specific element you manually select. The most common setup is the trigger element, so the automation fires and immediately updates the same element that caused it. You can manually set a field value. Pick a field, type in a value, and that's what gets written every time the automation runs. So in this case, if we were to want to update element name, every time we manually ran this automation within this room data sheets, you could rename the room data sheet element. You can clear field values, which resets a field to empty. This is useful when you want to wipe data on a specific trigger, a status reset, clearing an assignee when a phase closes, that kind of thing across elements. Field value from trigger element pulls a value from one field and writes it into another within the category you're working. This works within the same element or across multiple elements depending on what you've selected as the target. You can also calculate a value. This lets you write a formula that computes a result and writes it into a field. This functions in the same way that the formula editor works within a field, within a category. Same node editor, same system. We'll review that later. But essentially within that, this lets you write a formula that computes a result and writes it into the field. If, logic, concatenate, date math, and more. So we're covering this in the next episode, but I'll just flag it here. It exists, it's powerful, and it's coming up. One pretty important note on how layer handles automation updates is that an element that gets updated by an automation action won't actually re-trigger another automation from that update. This is intentional because it's how layer prevents runaway loops or infinite recurring loops. So if you're thinking about chaining automations together back to back, where automation B depends on automation A, finishing first or clearing first, be aware that this likely won't work as expected. There are a lot of things that could go wrong. So the safer approach is instead combining multiple automations that are interdependent here in this list. If you want a chain of actions to happen, try to bury them within a single automation, which can be done here. We'll look at adding a couple of the remaining actions, sending an email and sending a notification. So in this case, to showcase this, I've set up an automation where punch list status change will notify a person for review. So I've gone ahead and created a trigger based on punch list issues category. And within the fields to trigger this, we want to be monitoring status. In the actions, we're going to use a trigger element, and then we're going to, based on that, manually set a field value. The field being the person assigned to someone specific on our team or outside of our team who's set to review changes of this nature. In this case, I'm going to set myself to be the person notified. Beyond that, we can go ahead and add another action to send an email. To set the email recipient, you can dynamically do this, similar to above, based on person assigned to filled in from the field trigger or users in the project. You can dynamically automate the insertion of the subject based on the fields exposed to this category. In this case, we might say subject being issue type and status to notify them of the change. and issue description within the body, and any other related elements that you might have set up for your category. To see this in action, we're going to go to our punch list issues. I'm going to go to all issues and change issue 1 to in progress. Issue 2, in progress. You see we receive the notifications here. We can go and view notification, which will pull us up directly to the issue that's been updated. You can see all of the additional field information associated to this issue. And as you can see, we have received both of those email notifications, the subjects in alignment with the hashtags that we had included for field information, as well as any body text you added with dynamic field infill here based on those hashtags. Lastly, you can update a Revit parameter as an action, just down here. This one only shows up if your project is linked to a Revit model already. If it's not, you won't see this option. And what it does, it queues up a value from a layer field to be written back into a Revit parameter on the model element itself. This is the backbone of Layer's bidirectional sync because you manage the data in Layer, and then this action is what pushes it back to Revit. So I've set up this so when triggered manually within the Revit model category, furniture, because there's a drawn relationship between furniture to our layer side products list, I can tie into Revit parameter base price and leverage the unit cost value once triggered to write back to Revit's base price for this piece of furniture in the model category. So what I mean by that is if I go over to all products and I look here, there is an associated unit cost for each one of these products. Each one of these products are tied back to a specific Revit model piece of furniture. So if I were to update the unit cost of this lounge chair to be $3,000, we could go back to the Revit models furniture category and note that the unit cost has been updated due to the drawn automatic relationship within our project that exists between the model furnitures category and our products category up here. The manual automation that we set up earlier that allows us to select any elements that we want to push these changes back to Revit for. So if we were to run a manually triggered automation here and select this, this would push any selected elements in this view and the data that's been updated back to Revit. In this case, our automation was set up to push unit cost. That covers all 5 action types: create an element, send an email, send a notification, update an element, and update a Revit parameter. Now that we know what automation triggers and actions are and how they can begin to be used on projects, in the next episode, we'll dive a little bit deeper into how they might be able to be combined into a complete real-world workflow on a part of your project.